everyone, I'm back for some reason. I'm literally not sure why. I just felt like I had to record something, get it up there on, YouTube grind. 10 years down the road, we'll look back at this. We'll be watching a live stream or something, and I'll look back at my old videos and we'll cringe so hard. I just know it. At least, I really hope that's where we end up in 10 years. Right. Android phones, and Android ROMs, and swapping out the OS on Android phones. It's a pretty dumb situation. I'm not sure exactly what caused this to be like it, but okay, here's kind of the lay of the land. There's lots and lots and lots of phone brands. Every brand has a different way that they do the things. Partition layouts, the boot process. Obviously there's going to be some standardization because they're just about all running ARM chips. But the way that the GPUs are weird. The GPU situation on mobile phones it's a huge hurdle. Because there's all of these companies you've never heard of making GPUs for phones. AMD is trying to kind of enter the space. They and Samsung are doing some stuff together to sort of wedge their way in there. But it's very, very, very non-standard. And the ARM processor makers, it's an open standard. It's not open standard actually. Certainly not open source, but it's licensed out fairly liberally, at least compared to something like x86, where only 2 companies can make x86 CPUs. Well, everybody can make ARM CPUs. You just pay them a little bit, and then you can just do whatever you want with the ARM architecture. The instruction sets are they're super common, and so every little company can just manufacture their own ARM CPUs. Broadcom, Qualcomm, Realtek, MediaTek, Apple, of course, has been doing them for a long time. Even AMD and Intel, who do the x86 CPUs, are like, okay, we've got to get on ARM now. But, those are just a couple examples. There's hundreds of ARM chip makers. They all make pretty similar CPUs, but again, the GPUs are weird. And what's even weirder are the motherboards and the BIOSes. Those stupid Android BIOSes are the devil. That is the main problem with these phones and trying to hack on them. Because basically every production run of every model name device has a different way that it boots. The boot process is extremely non-standard for these things. So every Android or Linux mobile image that you make has to be made specifically for each production run of each device. Sometimes they'll just do it the same, but they probably won't. Samsung is kind of the worst in this regard. The unlock, if you get just a factory unlocked Google Pixel, those are usually surprisingly good because Google manages Android. Google manages the hardware, so if you get one where they allow the bootloader to be unlocked, it's the absolute bog standard Android bootloader unlock procedure. You can just do it, make whatever patches you want to the AOSP source code image, whatever, build it, I mean, you need a computer with 64 gigabytes of RAM to build it, but you can build it, and you just do it, and you flash it, and it boots. Most of the time, it'll just boot, or unless it fails to build or something. But again, that's only for very specifically the Pixel line of phones, and kind of the Nexus tablets before them, but those were weird and old. Stuff like the OnePlus phones, the Xiaomi phones. OnePlus and Xiaomi open source a lot of their kernel development, so you can just go on GitHub and get the sources of the patches that they make to their kernels, to the Linux kernel. So that's fine. And people have reverse engineered the boot process and made custom ROMs, they're called. ROM stands for read-only memory, because once upon a time these OS images were read-only memory. They're not anymore. They're definitely writable. I mean, they are mounted read-only during boot, but you can remount them yourself. And during, if you're in, a recovery OS, like Torb or something, you can very simply just mount it read-write, change stuff manually, and then boot back into the OS. Honestly, it's actually kind of nice to have a read-only root. When I reinstall Linux on my main laptop, I'm probably going to go with Void or Alpine, because those are pretty cool distros. Anyway, with something like that, a read-only root actually does make sense from a stability perspective. That way, everything that changes, all the volatile stuff and all your data is on the home partition. And so, you can kind of know, and especially if you have file system level automatic backups with something like BTreeFS, that's kind of fine. But Android doesn't work quite like that. Android works really weird because, your standard Ubuntu installation, there's two partitions. There's the boot partition and then the root partition. Boot partition is tiny, root partition is the whole disk, and everything goes on the root partition except for the files the boot files, EFI things, and maybe the kernel and stuff. Well, Android, there's 16 partitions. At least on a lot of these devices, there's more like 30. There's data, I feel like I've talked much and said little. Let's get into it. The different motherboards for these phones made by different manufacturers have such different and incompatible ways of booting, and such specific code needs to be initialized by them, that making a unified OS image is a pain. There are ways that you can alleviate this and get around it, though. One of those ways is to modularize that. So there is a project called Halium that pulls out the relevant parts of the boot process from an Android ROM, sticks them in its own thing. So you throw that on the phone, and then you throw a generic system image for another Android ROM, or Ubuntu Touch, or even probably Postmarket OS on top of that, and it can just work, because all the drivers and the boot code are from the Android section of the thing. You're just copy pasting those abstracted, and you hook them in to work with Systemd or whatever. That's what the Halium website says systemd. In reality, I strongly suspect that it's possible to do with other inits. They just didn't want to bother writing for different inits, because that's the way anything with systemd works. It's not strictly necessary. It's mostly a convenience for developers and standardizers. But an executable is an executable. A background service is a background service. A log file is a log file. Okay, journal D log files aren't log files. You get the picture. It's not, there's systemd hooks and saying you rely on systemd. It's never a hard requirement, and it's douchey to pretend like it is, but there's nothing. Okay, I'm sort of mad about this, all this stupid Android stuff, because the way that Halium works is it pulls from Lineage OS, because they're like that Lineage OS markets themselves as like the standard open source privacy Android that works. And then so you can just have it just work. Well, no, of course not. Because they only have a select number of devices that they support, and you have to, the devices they support are the devices they support. If you want, you can't just ask them to support a device. You have to build it yourself. How do you build it yourself? There's no guide. You look on the internet. How do you build Lineage OS? And it's like, oh yeah, you just download the Lineage OS. You just download the Lineage OS sources for a device. Like, what if there aren't any? How do I figure out where to put all the things together and what format? Like, I have the source code for the kernel patches they use. I have this other Android ROM where most of their builds are based on Lineage OS, but their build for this device isn't. Like, where do I figure out, ask, look, and stuff? Oh, just go on XDA developers. I'm not going on XDA. XDA is a garbage site. Like, literally, questions don't get answered on XDA. There's been a long original post through every thread on XDA. There's a really long, moderately descriptive original post with some embedded images and some expandable lists and some. Your warranty is now void. We're not responsible for thermonuclear war breaking your device or your alarm not going off. Please don't sue us. It's got the tacky Apache license warning thingy. Actually, I don't know if it's the Apache license. It's the XDA thingy that everybody on XDA feels like they need to put on there to feel cool. But then all of the replies for it are either just like, hey, I have a bug. Hey, I have a bug too. Oh, I'm really excited for this. I'm gonna put it on my device as soon as I can. Oh, me too. Seconded, thirded, fourthed. Hey, I have this other bug. Videos break and the screen flickers and I have to reboot to stop it flickering. Oh, just use Firefox instead of Chrome. That'll fix it. Okay, I did this, but it doesn't work. Okay, go to the settings, something, disable hardware overlays, or enable it if it's disabled, and then it'll keep working for like 10 more minutes, and then it'll just keep doing the same thing again. And nobody ever figures out what the fix is. Every now and then the developer will update their original post with an updated stuff, and of course the update, when you install the update, okay, your Wi-Fi and your cellular and your Bluetooth all stop working. It doesn't see your SIM card, and when you try to turn the Wi-Fi on, it just turns itself back off again. Like, And so you realize, okay, what happened? It's like, oh, I'm rooted. Maybe if I uninstall Magisk, I unroot the thing, it'll work. And then it works. So think, okay, how about I just reinstall with the full updated, image, because maybe the patching of the image is somewhere that corrupts something that needs to exist for the wireless drivers to work. So you do that. You wipe your whole OS, you reinstall with the new fully updated continuous image thingy, and lo and behold, you've got to re-sign in, and it launches right up to a home screen. It's like, okay, cool. My Wi-Fi works, my Bluetooth works, my everything seems to be working okay. So you root it. Okay, it still works. Everything's working okay. Oh wait, I don't have any Google apps. My signing into Google won't work. I can't make calls. But you can't make calls on Android because without the Google stuff, because it'll break, and you can't just use micro-G because you have to specially enable a patch when you're compiling the thing, and most of the ROM developers don't enable the patch, and the ones that do, it's still broken for some other stupid reason. It's not COVID, I promise. And then so you install the G apps on top of it, on top of all this brand new mess that you've created. You just boom, Google Apps. Throw some Google Apps on there. There's different distributions of the Google Apps. There's the Flame ones. There's the Nick ones. There's the standard mini ones. There's probably a dozen other different, and they all got different versions. There's the minimal one that's just Google search and phone, and there's the other one there's the full one that's got messages and photos and phone and Duo. Google Duo? Come on. Nobody uses Google Duo. And it's got Chrome, and it's just got every Google app you could possibly imagine. It's got Google TV, Google Movies, Google Videos, Google everything. YouTube Music, YouTube Kids, Google Maps, other Google Maps app that exists parallelly and gets recommended on the Play Store for some reason. It's and then they've got everything in between. It's okay, one of those in between packages might be nice. And if all else fails, you can just go in the terminal and there's a command you can run that'll trick the phone into thinking that the package is uninstalled without you actually having to modify the storage. It uninstalls it. It uninstalls it for the current user, which the Bionic libc that Android is compiled with only allows for one user ID on the system. Well, I mean two. It's a dual user system, Android. It's always a dual user system. There's root, who every Unix system has a root user. That's fine. There's root, and there's U0_A number, and it's a different number every time. You can't own things to different users. There's one user, and all of the user files are owned by them. But that's just on an OS Unix, on a Unix OS level, how the permissions work. No. On a practical app, on the app layer level, there's a different way that the permissions and user IDs work. There's your Google account and your local device account. Now, if you're not dumb like me and you reboot before flashing the G apps, they're the same account, because the Google Setup Wizard launches on first boot and takes you through setting up a user and all that stuff. If you are like me and you want to try and avoid the G apps for as long as you can, which is, it's only going to be a couple hours, but it's still, if I could get micro G to work, that'd be really nice. Please, thank you. Too bad, because it'll just auto-generate a user on first boot and not set them up with an account or anything. You can't set it up after the fact. Then when you flash the G apps, the Google Setup Wizard's going to want to run, so it's just going to panic and fail, and so every couple minutes you get an error message about the Google Setup Wizard failing. It's like, okay, I guess I've got to do the little user mode uninstall trick for the Google Setup Wizard. And then it's like, you go into the Contacts app to sync your contacts with your Google contacts because keeping VCF files is kind of dumb. And oh no, the Contacts app doesn't register your Google account. It auto registers the user that you are, the plain user without a Google account, and that's just a thing. You go looking for. So you go to add a new account to get your Google account hooked up with the Contacts app, so the Contacts app can pull the contacts from your Google. But then you type your Gmail address, you give your password, and then it says, this account already exists on this device. It doesn't look for it, it just tries to add it as a new account. But you've already set up the automatically generated user has a Google account of nil. It's got a fake Google account that doesn't exist, that's auto-generated by the device on the first boot. It's an empty field, and it's stuck as an empty field because the root partition's not writable, and even then it's probably not even stored as a regular file or anything because Android is done like that. And so now we're all it's just a stupid conundrum. It's like, I'm really glad that mainstream Linux doesn't have any of these problems. Now, this is something that's occurred with some variation of this has occurred with every version and spin of Android I've tried. By the way, most of the spins of Android are the exact same. It's just Google Pixel. It's just stock Google Pixel ROM with a different wallpaper, maybe a patched launcher, or a different icon pack, or an extra customization app. But none of the stuff is actually that interesting or new or different. Maybe the kernel version has a slightly different name because they used some weird patched kernel from a Russian forum. Those are cool. They also, have the potential of breaking your device by literally overheating the CPU because it's an overclocked kernel, and some people will do anything to get slightly better FPS. So the thing is, it really depends on the phone. If you're lucky enough and your phone is supported by Lineage OS and therefore by Halium and therefore by Ubuntu Touch and everything, that's great. I was not so lucky. I got my current phone because it was the cheap and good-looking phone. It had a couple features that I was sorely lacking in my previous phone, and I thought, hey, you could probably do some modding on this too. Well, you can, just not enough. So I ordered an older phone from the same company. It should get in around 2 weeks from now. I'm curious to see what you can actually do with a device that is supported. It's gonna be good, I hope. I'm going to I'll maybe post the progress here. I'm gonna install Ubuntu Touch. I'm going to try and do some manual updation with it. Also Post-Market OS. Post-Market OS is really, really cool and underrated. We should all be running Post-Market OS, honestly. Everybody's just run Alpine Linux, which Post-Market OS, by the way, is based on Alpine Linux. It's literally just Alpine Linux for ARM phones. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say. I know this has been a huge rant on Android, and I regret it all. Just make it all go away. Just Google why you gotta be dumb. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.